Today, after 2 years of negotiations, the United States has achieved something that decades of animosity has not: a comprehensive long-term deal with Iran that will prevent it from obtaining a nuclear weapon. In those days, the risk was a catastrophic nuclear war between two superpowers. In our time, the risk is that nuclear weapons will spread to more and more countries, particularly in the Middle East, the most volatile region in our world.
Robert Oppenheimer's work on the atomic bomb and Project Trinity in 1942 resulted in the triumphant Allied victory in World War II, yet also led to tragic human losses, nuclear proliferation, political crisis, and psychological terror that is still felt today. The discovery modernized our fighting and battle techniques, saving billions of lives that would have been lost, but in the process, sacrificed innocents. For the first time in history, the atomic bomb has made us completely capable of our own destruction.
When the groundbreaking discovery of the neutron emerged, fission was next to come. Two scientists named Otto Frisch and Rudolf Peierls discovered that bombarding uranium with neutrons creates a new material, barium. Although they don't realize why, a Swedish physicist named Lisa Meitner thinks she might. She realizes that they have split the nucleus of the uranium atom, which she calls fission. This new discovery, although not yet realized, could be the meaning of life or death. She publishes her conclusion in the scientific newspaper called Nature. As scientists and physicists everywhere digest Meitner's discovery, they started to realize that nuclear fission could determine the outcome of World War II. The timing could not be worse. In Germany, Adolf Hitler was starting the greatest revolution of all, World War II. Although the war began with Nazi Germany's attack on Poland in September 1939, those living in the US were terrified of what was to come for America. However, the bomb was looked at as a device that would win them the war. But soon, physicists around the world started to realize that a bomb could be built by the Nazis, that maybe they were in a race with Hitler. But so far, the race is only in the scientists' minds. No one else understands the danger of a bomb that doesn't yet exist. But physicist Leo Szilard writes a letter, a warning about the threat of the Nazis developing the bomb. The race was on.
On December 1st, 1941, 360 Japanese aircrafts took Pearl Harbor completely by surprise, taking over 2,300 lives. This act by the Japanese ultimately turned America in favor of joining World War II, in hopes to end the madness. 418,000 U.S. soldiers had already lost their lives in World War II, but the U.S. was closing in on Japan. However, years of war may have been left in the future. The U.S. needed a backup plan, some kind of strong weapon, a kind of gadget powerful enough to kill thousands at a time. Out of this came the atomic bomb. It would be the perfect weapon, allowing air attacks, thus preventing a ground war with Japan, as they knew it would have been brutal. The project was populated by many scientists who had escaped fascist regimes in Europe, and their mission was to explore a newly documented fission process involving uranium-235, with which they hoped to make a nuclear bomb before Adolf Hitler could develop it.
Soon after, scientist Robert Oppenheimer first heard about the discovery of fission. After looking into it, he realized that releasing excess neutrons in an oversized neutron would create a large blast of energy, and it would be destructive. Very destructive. To observe so-called fission directly, Otto Frisch used an ionization chamber, but soon after, a scientist named Arthur Dempster discovers uranium-235. Imported from Canada, this is the only pure material that was capable of providing not only the atom, but the neutron as well. Oppenheimer decides to run with it.
Robert J. Oppenheimer, an aspiring young scientist with big ideas. Oppenheimer was born on April 22, 1904, in New York City. He was a great student in school. As a child, he took math and science classes while also studying many languages. After he graduated from Harvard and studied at Cambridge University in England, he took a teaching job at the University of California as an expert in the science of physics. Oppenheimer did important research in theoretical astronomy, particularly general relativity and nuclear theory, nuclear physics, and quantum field theory and its extension in quantum electrodynamics. His work in these fields predicted many later finds, which also included the meson, neutron, and neutron star.
On December 28, 1942, President Roosevelt authorized the formation of the Manhattan Project to help achieve his goal of creating a nuclear weapon. Facilities were set up all over the United States as well as some discrete sites in Canada. These laboratories were made for this research and to test atomic bombs. The Manhattan Project was the building blocks of the experiment Trinity. Trinity was the code name of the first significant test of a nuclear weapon. The origin from the name Trinity had come from a previous loved one Oppenheimer once had. In 1936, Oppenheimer became involved with Jean Tatlock, a student at Stanford University School of Medicine. They broke up 3 years later, but still remained close friends. Tatlock had suffered from severe clinical depression and devastated everyone, especially Oppenheimer, when she committed suicide on January 5, 1944. Tatlock had previously introduced Oppenheimer to the poetry of John Donne, and it is widely believed that he named the first test of the nuclear weapon Trinity in reference to one of Donne's poems as a tribute to her. Her death, although forcing Oppenheimer to push his limits and work harder, contributed in the success of the nuclear bomb.
However, there were many high risks during the making of the bomb. Immediate effects of this event were death and tragedy. Thousands of lives were lost due to the misuse of radiation. People not involved in the event reacted tragically. Families were torn apart and grieved, and money was lost due to funerals and jobs. No one knew how much plutonium was safe to have in you. They just worked out a formula with a safety factor. The rumors were out. The US and Britain were both suspected to be working on an atomic bomb. And both Germany and Japan took notice. With research on the atomic bomb in both Germany and Japan, they sent in spies. Since Germany had an atomic bomb program of its own, they tried to create a network of spies within the United States. The majority of the German spies, though, were caught quickly and none discovered key information about the Manhattan Project.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried.
Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate.
Most people were silent.
This deal demonstrates that American diplomacy can bring about real and meaningful change. Change that makes our country and the world safer and more secure.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
The test of the atomic bomb was the biggest scientific experiment of the 20th century. At 5:29:45, it was detonated, and all the scientists could see exactly what they had created. There was an enormous ball of fire that grew and rolled as it grew. It went up in the air, in yellow flashes and into scarlet and green. A new thing had been born, a new control, a new understanding which man had acquired over nature. The bomb instantly vaporized the 10-story steel test tower that it had been placed on. It was the first success of the development of the atomic bomb. It was a pick-me-up for Oppenheimer and all who put effort towards it. But on August 6, 1945, over 70,000 Japanese lives were ended. 90% of buildings were either extremely damaged or completely destroyed. Still, the Japanese held on and refused surrender. 3 days later, a second bomb was dropped. 35,000 people died instantly, and over 60,000 were wounded. However, that's not all. Later, thousands of people died of radiation. Overall, between 150,000 and 250,000 people died because of the bombing. The nuclear arms race had begun. Germany surrendered on May 7, 1945, and the triumph of World War II was revealed to the public on August 15, 1945. In turn, Japan surrendered on September 2nd, recognizing the true threat of the bomb.
The impact of the atomic bomb has been tremendous. After 6 years of war, the first atomic bombs were dropped on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. More than 100,000 people were killed, and others subsequently died of radiation-induced cancers. The bombing brought the Second World War to an end, but what would have happened if the bomb had not been dropped? Would we have won the war? Could a bomb have been dropped on us? Would we be here right now, uninhabited of the Nazis, or would everything have changed? It is interesting to think about what could have happened without this gadget, but the discovery modernized our fighting and battle technique. It saved billions of American lives by sacrificing others. For the first time in history, because of the atomic bomb, humans are completely capable of our own destruction.